Some swimmers pull really straight and really deep. Some swimmers pull really bent and really shallow. They're both right. Let's find out why. Hi everyone, Andrew here, helping you help your swimmers get faster. And in this series, we're talking controversial topics. I'm just gonna riff on a topic and we'll explore what the controversy is, if it's justified, and what the nuance is. So with the arm pull, what you see is sometimes you have swimmers that are really straight and deep with their pulls, and some that are a lot more shallow and bent. And you see this with really successful swimmers of different types. And so clearly there's not necessarily one that's better than the other, but what you do notice is that some swimmers are going to select certain strategies in certain situations. And when you can understand that, then it's easier to tell why some people are a huge advocate for one way of pulling and then others are a huge advocate for another way of pulling. So there's two kind of things that are at play. One is the individual differences between these swimmers and then also the event demands. So let's talk about the event demands first. So if you have a 50 compared to a 1500, those are very different races. One, there's a huge premium on speed and pretty much no premium on efficiency. It's not really an issue at all. And then in the other, the 1500, you have a huge premium on efficiency because they have to sustain speed. And then there's also some speed is important, but not as important. And so that means swimmers are going to select different strategies. So if they swim with a bent arm, they're going to be able to move water earlier in the stroke, and it's going to be a lot more efficient because it's not as deep, the lever arm is shorter, and so it's going to take less energy to get a pretty good pull. They're going to be able to move a lot of water, almost as much as if they were deeper and straighter, but it's going to be a lot easier to do, and so that's going to be a lot easier to sustain. The other thing is that it takes a little bit of time to set up that stroke. When you're a little bit more patient in the front, you're really trying to get on top of it early in the stroke. That takes more time, but because the stroke rates are going to be slower over 1500 meters, they have the time to do that. So they don't necessarily pay a penalty for using that stroke, and they get the benefit of more efficiency. Now, when we think about a sprint, swimmers don't have any opportunity to wait in the front of the stroke, and they have to be really, really good with creating as much speed as possible. And so they're going to use the strategy that allows for the most speed, even if it's really fatiguing. And so a lot of times, if they just keep the arm relatively straight, they throw it in deep, they can get right into a powerful position pretty early because they can just throw it in deep and all of a sudden they're in a position to hold a ton of water in the back of the stroke, and that water is going to be harder to move because their arm is deeper. They have that's going to create a lot more force demand for them, and that's going to be more difficult, but they don't really care. And so it's a lot more effective because they can move more water with each stroke and they can move water faster, but it comes at a cost of endurance and efficiency, but it doesn't matter in shorter races. And so then everything in between, you're going to see versions of that with a 200 swimmer or versus a 800 swimmer, a 100 swimmer versus a 400 swimmer. It's going to be a little bit different based upon what the events demand. So that's a huge aspect of it. The other aspect is that swimmers are just different. So they have different limb lengths, they have different ranges of motion, they have different strength levels. And so sometimes they can't get into a really classical high elbow position in an earlier vertical forearm, so they have to use something else. So they may be pulling a little bit straighter because they just don't have the range of motion to get into those positions. And so that can, independent of the event demands, swimmers are also going to select strategies that they can use really well. And so some swimmers are going to have to pull a little bit deeper, a little bit straighter because they don't have the range of motion necessary to get in some of those bent elbow positions. And so that can be a huge factor too. Also, if swimmers aren't strong enough, they're not going to be able to have a really deep pull. So they may even be swimming short races, but because they lack the strength, they've got to bend the elbow, they've got to be a little bit shallower because otherwise they're not going to have the strength to move that much water and move that much water fast. So those are two key aspects of why swimmers pick different types of pulls. And so one isn't better than the other. It's more about what's is going to be most appropriate for each individual and help them figure out what's going to work for them. And so again, there's not better or worse. There's appropriate for given people, for certain people, in swimming certain events, and that's what really matters. So how do you help them figure it out? Well, you have them use lots of different stroke counts. You have them swim at lots of different speeds. You can add resistance. You can use different hand postures, so like closed fists, okay hands, different types of paddles. And then you can also have them wear a buoy and just do pulling stuff so it puts more pressure on their upper body. You have them do that, and you combine those different strategies in lots of different ways. Sooner or later, they're going to figure out what works best for them. And so it's not so much about having the right way to pull and to knowing the right way to pull. It's more about putting swimmers in situations where they have to figure out the right way to pull for them. And if you can make that happen, they're going to be a lot more successful. So if you want to learn more about how to develop an effective pull in freestyle, check out the video here. If you want me to cover another topic, some other sort of controversy that you're interested in, drop a comment below, and I'll get to that sooner than later.